Please welcome our next panel, Changing Neighborhood, Changing Needs, Brooklyn and Beyond, featuring moderator Marie, Elena Martinez, and panelists Sean Feeney, Alice Cheng, and Brandon Hoy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maria Elena Martinez. I am the co-founder of a website called New Worlder, which is a culinary travel site that explores food and drink through the Latin American perspective, and the founder of Meets New York City, which is an events brand that brings chefs into New York to showcase their culinary heritage. But most importantly to this panel, I'm a Brooklyn resident. And I want to welcome you to today's session, Changing Neighborhoods, Changing Needs, Brooklyn and Beyond, where we'll explore how restaurants and the hospitality industry really put Brooklyn on the map. While this has affected nearly every part of the borough, when we asked one of our panelists, Alice Cheng, where most people mean when they think of Brooklyn in terms of food and drink, she says that the answer to that question is North Brooklyn, here, essentially, Williamsburg. And it's the most sought out part of Brooklyn when we think about influences and inspiration. And there's plenty to discuss past Brooklyn, and that's why past Williamsburg, and that's why our panelists kind of make up a different swath of what's happening here on a larger scale. So I'd like to introduce them. Brandon Hoy, on the end, is the co-owner of the iconic Roberta's in Bushwick, which opened in 2008. As we'll talk a little bit on the panel, Roberta's is the Brooklyn institution that many closely associate with the borough around the world. And over the years, it's grown to include the 2 Michelin-starred tasting-driven Blanca, and now in Los Angeles Outpost. Alongside co-owner and chef Carlo Miraci, Hoy founded Roberta's with the goal of providing the underserved neighborhood of Bushwick with artisanal food and drinks, and of course, vibe. At the helm of daily operations, Hoy also fronts their art department, which is responsible for packaging and merchandise. Sean, next to me, Sean Feeney partnered with then neighbor Chef Misi Robbins in 2014 to build their hospitality company, Grovehouse. Together, they're responsible for 2 of Williamsburg's most popular restaurants, Lilia and Misi, which opened in 2016 and 2018, and both received 3 stars from the New York Times. Until 2019, when he finally stepped back to focus solely on his restaurants, Feeney spent 16 years in finance at companies like Cantor Fitzgerald and Goldman Sachs. And in addition to Misi and Lilia, Sean is the managing partner of Hometown Barbecue and Red Hook Tavern. Alice Cheng, in the middle, is the founder and CEO of Culinary Agents, a professional networking and job marketing website designed for the hospitality industry. Culinary Agents has become something of a marker of the changing needs and trends of restaurants in New York City, and she'll help us make sense of how that spotlight shifted away from New York City to Brooklyn over the last 10 years or so. She currently serves as an advisor for FoodX, an accelerator program for food-related tech startups, and for Women in Hospitality United, a nonprofit that works toward developing new standards for equity, accountability, and transparency within hospitality. Now that we got all that out of the way, I want to start with the growth of Bushwick. In 2008, a restaurant called Roberta's jumped onto the culinary landscape, taking a once desolate area of the borough and making it hot and interesting and a destination that people travel to eat pizza. So there was stuff happening in Williamsburg at that time, and we'll talk about some of that as we talk about Misi and Lilia and Sean's experience. But I really think that Brandon has kind of an interesting outlook on what launched this global Brooklyn thing. So Brandon, if you want to just tell us a little bit about, paint the picture of Bushwick then, before Roberta's,
Sure.
what led up to it, and how it changed.
Yeah, I think there is a common misconception that it was desolate, and I think there's 2 very distinct parts of Bushwick, and where we were is still actually considered East Williamsburg. It was the East Williamsburg Industrial Park, and when we moved there, even prior to moving there, we were hanging out in the neighborhood, and it was largely blue-collar neighborhood. There was a lot of industry there. There was still, cement factories. Boar's Head has a large distribution center there. There's the wonton factory. So a lot of what was happening was still very industrial. And at night it was very dark. There was a pack of wild dogs that lived in the neighborhood when we got there. So desolate to the sense that like it still felt very very empty, and there wasn't a lot happening, and there was a strong community that lived there. There was a lot of people that had been there for years who were working in this industries and the factories close by, and there was also a budding artist neighborhood that was forming as well. There was a lot of large spaces for people to work in and to live work. And it was starting to really have this undertow of creativeness that we started to see. And I was introduced to it, 3 years prior to this. A friend, Chops, had opened a bar called Kings County. It was really kind of one of the first things to happen in the industrial park. And there was just a lot of, there was just a sense of creativeness that was happening there. And there was a lot of artists. And a lot of music that was happening, and I think that was what really drew us to the neighborhood. We just really felt like this was a place that was affordable for young people to kind of get a lot of space and be creative. But the one thing that we noticed quickly was that there wasn't a lot in the neighborhood to do. Outside of Kings County, there wasn't a lot of amenities for people who were living in the neighborhood. Most of these people were jumping back on the L train and heading into Williamsburg or going into the East Village. And this cycle of kind of artistry has happened for years, right? It's whether it was Soho and then moved to the East Village, we've seen this progression happen, and it just happened to be that at that time that Bushwick was that place where it was happening, and it was palatable. You could really sense it when you were there, that there was this really young energy, and that was prior to Roberta's. We just knew that it existed there, and really our goal in the beginning was to create a watering hole for these people and like-minded people and people of this neighborhood to kind of like bring the community together. And we've found it to be such a beautiful neighborhood despite all of this kind of like post-apocalyptic like exterior and the wild dogs. It was definitely a place where we could light fireworks. It almost seemed lawless at the time that we were there, and but also just such a beautiful place for us to create something. And what was important to us really was that we were young. And we didn't have a lot of money to get into this, but we knew this is what we wanted to do. And East Williamsburg Industrial Park was a place that was accepting to us and was affordable for us to move into. And thank God, it was beautiful.
Sean, tell us a little bit about the opening of Lilia and the search for where you were going to open this new restaurant. Misi had been off the scene for a few years, and it was really important to find the right space. You were in the West Village, which is like ground zero for amazing new restaurants.
Yeah, so when Misi and I were living in the same building as each other for about 5 years, we came to this moment where my wife and I had this idea of potentially partnering with her to open her own restaurant. And she said no to me a lot of times over the course of 4 months, but those conversations, every time she was saying no to me, we were having some great developments in what our company was going to be founded upon. So when she finally did say yes to us, we knew that she was going to be the creative force, but we also were able to agree on how we were going to run a successful and profitable business too. Because if we were, she would have the greatest canvas and biggest canvas she could ever want to paint on. So once that night did happen and we said, let's do this, we then spent 10 months trying to will ourselves into a space in the West Village because that's where we lived. And it was just not possible. And then we started going to other places in Manhattan, which were not possible either. And by luck, I was able to find a space through a friend in North Williamsburg that was an auto body shop. And I sent Misi a text, and we were very frustrated. We weren't sure if this partnership was even going to last to see a restaurant open. And I texted her the space. And because my dad's in the audience right now, I'm not going to say exactly what the text back to me was, but it did say, I am not opening an effing restaurant in effing Brooklyn.
So you said it.
Yes. And I said, well, listen, we might not be able to open a restaurant together, period, so can you please just go look? And she did go look. And the catalyst was financial. The second thing that made this happen was Misi having the vision, seeing the bones of the disgusting auto body shop, where two people were actually squatting on the side room. During the night, they would throw raves, and they would wake up in the morning hungover and sleep, and then there were actually cars in the space when she went in to see it. So I was at work texting her, what is it like? Tell me like a little something. And she's like, Jesus, I don't even know where I am. Like, I literally don't know where the subway stop is. So I said, okay, well, but she's like, I think we should come and look. So for the next couple weeks, we would go every single day possible to just look at this neighborhood. And what we saw was we definitely did not look like anybody in the neighborhood. I was wearing Gucci loafers and one of those like finance Patagonia vests, so I definitely did not look anything like. But we did see these buildings that were going up.
I was one of the squatters in that building.
Yeah. I don't wear those Gucci loafers anymore. And what we were doing was we were walking around and seeing this vibrant community, this young, diverse community, and a lot of these buildings going up. So we were like, gosh, we got a shot. You know, we were definitely motivated by the finances. We were inspired by the bones. But now we're like, this could be a reality because we got a shot to welcome these people in. So that's when we felt good about it. So 14 months later, we opened Lilia in January of 2016. And our whole thing was, we wanted it to be an extension of our home. That's how we became friends. That's how we became family and partners. And we wanted this place that we were opening to be an extension of our home. And we wanted to create these inspiring dining experiences to help make every day a good day. The only way we were going to be able to do that was when somebody entered, anybody, they needed to feel like they were safe, and while they were in our presence, to feel comfort, not to think about anything else that was going on before they arrived, so that it gave them the opportunity to leave happier. And that's what we tried to do every single day. And what we heard and what we saw were, as proud as we were to deliver those experiences, the people that were coming to dine from the neighborhood were as proud to be there. They also were talking a lot, and we would hear every night how proud they were that we were a part of their neighborhood, and that they felt like Lilia was an extension of their home. And that was pretty awesome to feel. And from that point on, no matter what we were going to do together, Missy and I, we wanted to really be a part of this community. And I think it was, looking around, understanding that we had this responsibility now to be a part of this incredibly strong neighborhood that had this rich and diverse history, but also that we had an opportunity, almost an obligation, to push it forward and to be a part of an exciting future. And that's kind of what led us now to Misi, which is in South Williamsburg, where the building that we went into definitely didn't have any bones. It was actually it was just a white box. It wasn't inspiring at all. And it was the challenge to create a warm environment and a cool environment that we had at Lilia. But it was the catalyst for us to be a part of South Williamsburg, this revitalization and this relaunch, and to be part of the exciting future of growth. And forever now, that's kind of what we're focused on. And I think it's about two things. As much as we wanted to create this environment inside our walls, we now saw what the power of creating that environment outside of the walls and investing in that community and engaging in a community, what type of magic that can create. And although that's what we do every night, we feed people and make them happier, we do have this amazing ability right now to invest and engage in the community outside of our restaurants too, and we do many things to do it.
Well, in between opening of Lilia and Misi and after Roberta's, 2011, Sifton reviewed Roberta's in the Times, and 2017? 16, you got a 3-star
Yes.
for Lilia. So in between that, Culinary Agents started in 2012. So you're saddled in between these two incredible touchstone restaurants for Brooklyn. Can you just tell us a little bit about what was happening after Roberta's got this incredible review and before Lilia came along and created a new buzz in Williamsburg?
Yeah, absolutely. And we started in 2012, and we're a tech startup that was focused on how do we create tools to better support small business owners, restaurateurs that were struggling with not just finding the right people, but also having operations tools that were efficient. And ultimately, how do you project your employer brand and tell people that you're looking for great talent and make it easy for them to apply to your jobs? So, one thing that I will say in general, which both of these gentlemen and their partners have done, is when folks say we want Brooklyn or we want this to be like Brooklyn, I think what they're referring to is this vibe. And for folks who have never even been here or spent any time here, you see them referring, I want to create a space like that. And that's really something really incredible that I think, the folks in the room here and people who are seeking out new spaces, is that hospitality and the restaurants that you all create define and develop neighborhoods that then not only inspire the immediate community and, cities around it, but also other cities. I mean, we're nationwide. I'll go into, Atlanta and people will be like, I want that Brooklyn vibe. I'm like, oh, have you been there? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. But between social media and all the access to things, and it's really incredible thing for us to see as we've grown. But sorry, I digress. Specifically back to Brooklyn, what we saw, and I ran, is align with our growth. One thing that really interestingly happened in that time frame was that not only did we have a spike in more businesses in the Brooklyn area looking for talent, but this was the only area that the applicants were outpacing the number of jobs that we're posting by 500 to 1,000%. In other areas, you see some correlation of more businesses, more jobs, more applicants. In Brooklyn specifically, from 2015 to 2017, the number of applicants were skyrocketing and outpacing the number of jobs, which was something that we were not seeing happen in other cities and other neighborhoods.
And farewell to that time.
Well, in terms of, Roberta's and Lilia and Misi, are your staff living in the area? I mean, where are they coming from? And are they living in the area that, you have created for them? Are they locals, or do they travel to get to your spots? Like, have you created true community around your restaurants?
I think we're really fortunate because I would say 80% of our teams live within a 3-mile radius of our restaurants. And what that creates is the opportunity to live a healthier life in terms of walking to work or riding a bike. Also, financially, they're not spending a third of their earnings each night taking an Uber home to Brooklyn at 1:30 in the morning. I also think it's a pretty magical thing that has been created in that when they're at the restaurant, they're viewed as friends of our guests. And what we've seen them going to baby showers, weddings, or special life events outside of our restaurants where they've essentially made relationships with our guests and neighbors. And it's a pretty powerful thing. And that I don't believe would have been able to have happened in the West Village if we did open a restaurant there.
Brandon, you see similar?
Yeah, I mean, almost all of our employees come from the area, pushing out to East New York, but primarily most of them are coming from Bushwick and Williamsburg, and it has been kind of since the early days, and I think there's still just like there's still it's still affordable. This is probably changing-ish, yeah, but still, further out in Bushwick is still affordable. But we're seeing less people coming from Williamsburg, less employees that are coming from Williamsburg. It's actually trending further east, to be honest with you, East New York and those neighborhoods.
Alice, you had said something interesting to me when we were talking, that in 2015, 2016, Brooklyn became its own search tab, right? Is that right? Explain a little bit about that, because it's fascinating in the borough.
Yeah, so we, and a lot of this, the caveat is a lot of it was the growth of our company, right? Right now we have almost 1 million users across the U.S., and the New York tri-state area is our biggest metro. In the beginning, we had bundled everything in together to the New York City area as one major metro area. And then around the times that we talked about, we realized that we wanted better data. We wanted to be able to see migration patterns. We wanted to understand, why are we getting spikes of average applicants? Is it because now people who live in Brooklyn have other options, have more options, have more places that they specifically are seeking out to work, and instead of just applying to Manhattan restaurants, they're applying
and the cost of living as well, right?
Exactly.
Which I think becomes such a factor in this whole thing. It's not an easy business to make it in, and like for the most part, these people are like looking for places that are affordable for them to live. I would say, outside of your back of house staff, a lot of these people are searching for a different destination for their career, whether it is in music or acting, but they're all looking for something else when they first get into this. And I think those people are typically looking for places to live that they can afford.
Absolutely, and we actually have a willing to relocate feature that we had added, and we also noticed people were specifically calling out Brooklyn versus just willing to relocate to New York City area. And so that's kind of when we started breaking out and being able to look at the trends for Brooklyn separate from New York City. It's pretty interesting.
Sean, you had mentioned that in your staff living local, that there's a wellness piece that comes in to play when they're biking to work or walking to work, that like didn't even dawn on you when you were seeing what was happening with your staffing at Lilia, Misi.
Yeah, it's been an awesome thing for people to feel like they can wake up and go for a workout or a class of yoga or Pilates or meditate or therapy, and they can do all of that stuff before they come to work, and financially they're able to live a healthier life too, which is a huge thing for people and their well-being.
So
It's getting stuck in the train, just like, it's not healthy for anybody.
or fun. It's not really that fun either. What are the benefits, do you think, to all of these restaurants springing up in Brooklyn besides buzz? I mean, there's an international cachet that's happening if you have a restaurant in Brooklyn at this point. But in addition to buzz, why would you tell someone else to open in Brooklyn? Outside of just it being affordable per se, like what do you think are the draw besides just buzz?
One of the first things I think was, I mean, especially for us, we got the opportunity to break the mold. There was an old guard, if you will, and there was a way to opening a restaurant when we did this. And I think when you moved outside to Brooklyn, it kind of opened up the platform for you to do it as you will. And I think it gave people a lot of opportunities to reimagine what a restaurant was to them. And I think Brooklyn gave that to a lot of people, where they got to say, this is how I feel about the hospitality industry, and this is what a restaurant is to me. And I think your voice kind of was silenced. You kind of had to fit into that box in Manhattan, and there was it was so cost prohibitive to do business there, that you had to make it financial. And I think there was a lot more artistry that got to happen in Brooklyn because you were free of some of that financial burden, and you really got to open something that you were passionate about and something that really meant something personal to you. And I think that was an opportunity that happened throughout Brooklyn that was really refreshing. And I think philosophically that carried on even as it got more expensive to do. I think people took this as an opportunity to say, I'm going to be innovative in this field, and I'm going to change the way that people perceive the restaurant business.
I think the three things, it's hard for me to give advice to anybody opening a restaurant because it's up to you what you want your path to be. But for me, the three things that I've really loved about Brooklyn, Williamsburg, Red Hook, these communities is, one, the diversity. The motto of Brooklyn is, in unity there is strength. And, of course, last week we all remember that we come on different boats, but now we're in the same boat together. And when I see what goes on in our restaurants every night, not just guests, but the makeup of our teams, we're living that. And I'm really proud to be a part of that, and that excites me to continue doing it in Brooklyn, in the neighborhoods that we're doing it in. And number two, my family. Raising a family in Brooklyn has been an exciting thing that I never thought would ever be something that I was going to entertain. It was always about, moving back to the Jersey Shore where I grew up, and I had this cul-de-sac that I would play basketball and soccer with the older guys, and that's what I always had in my plan. But now I have this wonderful backyard of Domino Park and McCarran Park, and it's just been a really pleasant thing to see, especially at like 1:30 every afternoon. If you come to Misi, and you'll see a lineup of children that are literally looking into our pasta room like it's an aquarium. And but what's really incredible is at any moment of the day, you'll see a Hasidic family, a black family, a Latino family, and then my two boys who are, basically headbutting the window. And at 4 o'clock every day, we wipe this big glass pasta room window down because it's all the snot and the fingerprints of all these different kids. And for me, that is so exciting to be able to raise a family in this type of world that we live in, and it's there for you. And then the third thing I would just say, what I'm so proud about is to see that interaction of our team and guests, and there is no division. There's no separation. And I just don't think I would have been able to have all of those three things if, again, we opened in the West Village of Manhattan.
So in terms of opening in other places, you are in Miami with Hometown Barbecue.
No, I do not have a part in Miami.
You don't?
No.
Okay, just in New York.
That's Billy.
So you have Red Hook spaces, and you have Roberta's going into LA. How do you replicate in other areas that aren't the original space, the original thing that people love so much? How do you do that?
I just never looked at it as replication. For me, I've birthed these things, and they're children to me, and I nurture them. And the common line is their DNA, that they're raised by Carlo and I. And I think the best thing you can do is give them a chance into the world. You put them out there, and you do all of the things that a good business does. You're diligent on things, and you try to create cultural beats with them, but replication is a very difficult thing when it comes, especially a place like Roberta's, and I don't think we ever went into it being we want to replicate this all over. I think what we did was we wanted, one, to feed people high quality food, and that we were very passionate about, and for us these were just more opportunities to feed people. And I think we looked at it that way always, that this was a new thing, this was a new child, and this child was going to have characteristics of its own, and it was going to grow up thinking its own way, but its common DNA was us.
And I think the only replication that we do is the process of finding those spaces. Lilia was the 39th place that we looked at. It was the first place outside of Manhattan. Misi, we looked at 42 places before finding, this great project of South Williamsburg. We're on site 51 right now for number 3. And I don't know, we don't have in our minds a number. I think it's just that maniacal and methodical process, sticking to that formula that we believed in from the beginning, but also not ever wanting our spaces to feel like we're not there and that not feel special like they do with Lily and Missy. That's probably the number one most important thing. It's are our fingerprints all over that place?
I'm guilty of stopping and staring into the window, so I'm sure my fingerprints and hopefully not my snots are there.
How do you see, Alice, how do you see this continuing? Do you see it slowing down anytime soon, this eternal desire for applicants to be in Brooklyn and be part of what is continuing to cement itself here?
Well, I think, no, I don't see it stopping, and no, I don't hope that it will stop either. I think it's a cycle, right? What you all have started is created opportunity for not just yourself for further growth, but also others to take the risk to find the space and to kind of build upon the foundation that's already there. Applicants, I think, in line of living healthier lifestyles, being more sustainable. We focus on career development and mentorship, and we look at career pathing. And the restaurant industry is really the feeder to the rest of the hospitality industry. I mean, there's different pillars. There's hotels. There's food service. And if you look at longevity in the industry, there's a lot of things that I think all of the leaders, in the space are doing and really vocalizing to create better spaces for their staff and for their teams and for themselves to promote, creativity and growth. And I don't know if that was something that was so, on the forefront of 10, 15 years ago. It was a different time. We saw applicants thinking about their careers differently, even in the early stages. We're an 8-year young startup, I should say. And when we look at also, we fold in analytics and some AI into our applications to how do we help talent discover. They're clearly wanting to do things. You see the pattern of the types of jobs they apply to, where they apply to, where they want to relocate to, what category of businesses, maybe a particular chef or cuisine or something that they're following. And we feed that back to help them discover. You were doing these things in this neighborhood. What about these other things within that neighborhood? By the way, these are new openings. By the way, this is the type of cuisine that you said that you're really trying to learn or grow in. And as people start thinking about their careers differently, like what skills do I want to learn? I want to open my own restaurant one day. Who do I think has done it really well? Let me go work for them. People are being much more deliberate with where they want to work, who they want to work for, and what culture they want to grow in, and that's really inspiring to see.
Where are you seeing some of the growth outside of North Williamsburg and Bushwick, and is there room, to you guys, is there room for more growth? I mean, I feel like Williamsburg has so many restaurants. Where is the room for continued growth, both in Williamsburg and Bushwick, and where do you see people choosing after Williamsburg and Bushwick? Where else are we growing?
Well, I'll say, because I'm a little once removed from specific neighborhoods, what we've seen in also other cities is that there are definitely, whether it's government initiated, there are definitely areas and pockets of areas that are under high development. In Boston, all by the water, and you see that almost forced in some areas where there's so much development going into an area, it loses a little bit of its soul, dare I say, and maybe the projects are driven by different priorities. I think in the Brooklyn area specifically, what I see and what I hope to continue to see is that in every major neighborhood, there's been a handful of pioneers, of folks who have kind of come in and defined it. And then they've been able to successfully not only create that vibe, that space, and their own mark, if you will, but they've been successful in moving to another part of Brooklyn or another area, another city, And still, I think what people really look for is, are you still true to your original spaces? Right? They don't want the original ones to be different now that you've grown past. You don't want to, dare I say, like
Sell out.
Where do you see what's next, Sean and Brandon?
I mean, it's a hard one you battle with, but like I said, for us, it was always just like giving birth. Like, you're just keep creating and you keep moving forward. But it's definitely something that you struggle with, selling out, right? And what that means. So what that meant on the first creation is always different in the second, and or like creating an album. It's like you can only make the music you can make, and it's hard to go back in time and recreate the things of your past. You're younger. I wasn't nearly as smart. I'm not very smart now, but I wasn't nearly as smart then. So the things that you do, in the evolution of you as a person just start to change. It's hard. I struggle with it too. It's hard. You look back on these things sometimes. We talked earlier about having perspective. It's hard when you're in the midst of it. You're so caught up. Everything is all in all the time. And then sometimes when you get a chance to look back on these things, it could be both sad and like a very like warm feeling at the same time.
Sean?
I mean, we're still excited about Williamsburg, and there's still a lot of work to be done there, and we're definitely going to try and do that. But I'm also really excited about Sunset Park, Brownsville, East New York. This is where I want to spend my time in the next 15 and 20 years, because that's where the real opportunity is. We have 9 kids, 17-year-old kids, that work with us at Lilia and Misi, that come from those neighborhoods, that go to culinary high schools, that go to high school in Williamsburg. And I want those kids to be with us to open up their own places in their hometowns. And I think that is what this is going to be about, making those places better that they grew up in. And that's going to be the reality. So right now, we're going to keep on doing our thing in Williamsburg because the opportunity is still there to do it. But the potential to really push it and keep moving neighborhoods forward, I think there's just such a great chance to take advantage of.
Thank you, guys. I could keep doing this for another hour, but I'm already over and I'm going to get yelled at. So thank you so much, you guys. This has been a great panel.